Welcome to Youth Online Live, and a very happy Easter to you. This morning we're going to have a mixture of games and teaching, and you're going to be able to get involved too. At Youth we love playing games, and it's a bit trickier now that we're all apart, but during the week we challenged the team to take part in the Cookie Face Challenge. These are the contenders. Who do you think will be the fastest? We're sure you guys can do better than this. In our Zoom session a bit later on, we're going to be giving you the chance to compete. Can you beat the Youth Leader Champion? Now, with a slight change of pace, we're going to watch a talk for this week, recorded by me a bit earlier on in the week, hence the costume change. So this morning, I'm going to be talking about the idea of, are we really expecting a miracle? What we're celebrating today is the most miraculous, most awesome, most significant thing that has ever happened in the history of the world. It not only changed the course of history, but from that point forward, but it also changed the past as well. It's an earth-shattering event, but despite this, it can be really easy for us as Christians to have a tendency to normalise it and just accept it as an annual event on the calendar, and maybe eat some chocolate if you've been able to get to the shops, and then just carry on. Good Friday to Easter Sunday are pivotal moments for all of humanity. It changed the deal between us and God, with Jesus dying on the cross and then crucially coming back to life. His actions were done so that he could cover all of the bad things that we've done to remove the division between us and God. So what might surprise you is that Jesus' death and resurrection at Easter isn't what I want to focus on this Easter Sunday. What I want to focus on is the disciples and how their struggle can teach us how to become better followers of Jesus today. Before Jesus was betrayed by Judas and then taken away by the Romans for trial and execution, Jesus explained to his disciples that this would soon happen, as we read in Mark chapter 8 verses 31 to 33. Jesus predicts his death. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But Jesus turned and looked at his disciples. He rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have the mind of the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." So here we see Jesus choosing to plainly explain to his friends what's about to happen to him. We see him saying to his friends that he must go and be executed by the religious leaders. He explains that his death is necessary, but it is also only temporary, and that he will soon come back to life again 3 days later. Here we see Jesus doing something amazing. He is giving them a sneak peek, an insight into a miracle that's soon to happen. However, the disciples completely missed this part and focus on the practical. In the passage it says, Peter took him aside to rebuke him, which in my mind goes a bit like this. Peter says to Jesus, "Why are you talking about dying? This isn't going to motivate a crowd. Come on, you're the Son of God. There's so much to do. Now isn't the time to get all depressed. Why are you getting so morbid?" I think these 3 verses excellently demonstrate the mistake that we can all make when we hear the miraculous from God. Here we see Jesus telling the disciples 2 things. Thing number 1, I'm soon going to die at the hands of the religious leaders. And thing number 2, it's okay though, because I'm only going to die for 3 days, because after that I'm going to come back to life, as it's all part of God's plan. Peter focuses all of his attention on the first, the problem, and in doing so completely misses the miracle that Jesus says will accompany it. At this point, it's just a conversation around the dinner table, so let's fast forward a bit further in the story. In Mark chapter 9, we see Jesus telling them again that he would soon be killed. Because he was teaching his disciples, he said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be delivered to the hands of men. They will kill him, and after 3 days he will rise." And then again, for good measure, he tells them a third time, Matthew chapter 20, where he says to them, again he took the 12 aside and told them what was going to happen to him. "We are going up to Jerusalem," he said, "and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him and kill him. 3 days later he will rise." And Jesus continues to remind his disciples in the lead up to his eventual arrest that he will be taken, he will be killed, and he will rise again. So you'd think after all of these promptings, all of these revision sessions with Jesus, you would have thought that the disciples would be ready. But we see that this wasn't always the case. They were scared and weak, but God was still able to use them. Shortly before Jesus' arrest, we see Jesus predicting that the disciples will scatter and that Peter will deny even knowing him, although he flatly denies this. Fast forward again to the action, and we see exactly what Jesus said happened. The disciples fled. Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times in a single night. However, for the disciples, everything seemed lost. Jesus had been taken, their hope had been taken, but God was still in control. We see just as Jesus promised, he was executed, he was buried in a tomb, but we also see the miracle that Jesus coming back to life. Even when his followers had lost hope, the women were going to his burial place to prepare his corpse. God's miraculous work had already happened. What I feel we can take away from this is that God does miracles. However, these miracles are not dependent on our expectations. Just as the disciples in this time of struggle found it hard to believe and doubted at the time of the greatest miracle, God was still able to use them. As we can read in Acts, they spread the good news of Jesus across the earth and founded the early church. Jesus' work didn't finish with his death and resurrection. He passed it on to his disciples and subsequently to us, with Mark 16 saying, "Later Jesus appeared to the 11 as they were eating. He rebuked them for their lack of faith and their stubborn refusal to believe those who had seen him, that he had risen. He said to them, 'Go into all of the world, preach the gospel to all creation. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved. Whoever does not believe will be condemned. And these signs will accompany those who believe in my name and will drive out demons. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up snakes with their hands, and when they drink deadly poison, it will not hurt them at all. They will place their hands on people who are ill, and they will get well.'" So we're going to look at this in a bit more detail in our Zoom groups shortly. We'll see you there.